I tried to read this, it's just an attempt, and it's not. I don't authorize any sort of usage of it at any point, but order it not to be distributed under any circumstances. This attempt, however good I might become at it, basically, it's not going to be of any value at this point. So I intentionally do not want to do. See, there's also someone tapping in the background, so already the entire recording is wasted. This guy is mad and he wants it to sabotage the recording with me. Chapter 2. From the once and future king, the queen of air and darkness. On the battlements of their castle at Camelot, during an interval of peace between the two Gaelic wars, the young king of England was standing with his tutor, looking across the purple wastes of evening. A soft light flooded the land below them, and the slow river wound between venerable abbey and stately castle, while the flaming water of sunset reflected spires and turrets, and pennant coals hanging motionless in the calm air. The world was laid out before the two watchers like a toy, for they were on a high keep which dominated the town. At their feet they could see the grass of the Otter Bailey. It was horrible looking down on it, and a small, foreshortened man with 2 buckets on a joke, making his way across to the menagerie. They could see further off the gatehouse, which was not so horrible to look at because it was not vertically below, the night guard taking over from the sergeant. They were clicking their heels and saluting the presenting pikes and exchanging passwords as merrily as a marriage bell. But it was done in silence for the two because it was too far below. They looked like lead soldiers, the little gallows glasses, and their footsteps could not sound upon the luscious sheep-nippled green. Then outside the curtain wall there was the distant noise of old wives bargaining, and brats bawling, and corporals quaffling, and a few goats mixed with it, and 2 or 3 lepers in white hoods ringing bells as they walked, and the swishing robes of nuns who were kindly visiting the poor, 2 by 2, and a fight going on between some gentlemen who were interested in horses. On the other side of the river, which ran directly beneath the castle wall, was a man ploughing in the fields with his plough tied to the horse's tail. The wooden plough squeaked. There was a silent person near him, fishing for salmon with worms. The rivers were not polluted in those days, and further off there was a donkey giving his music concert to the coming night. All these noises came up to the top of the 2 towers Smolly, as though they were listening through the wrong end of a megaphone. Arthur was a young man, just on the threshold of life. He had fair hair and a stupid face, but at any rate there was a lack of cunning in it. It was an open face, with kind eyes and a reliable or faithful expression, as though he were a good learner who enjoyed being alive and did not believe in original sin. He had never been unjustly treated, for one thing, so he was kindly to other people. The king was dressed in a robe of velvet which had belonged to Uther the Conqueror, his father, trimmed with the beards of 14 kings, had been vanquished in the olden days. Unfortunately, some of these kings had had red hair, some black, some pepper and salt, but their growth of beard had been uneven. The trimming looked like a feather boa. The moustaches were stuck on round the buttons. Merlin had a white beard, which reached to his middle, horn-rimmed spectacles, and a conical hand. He wore it in a compliment to the Saxon serfs in the country, whose national headgear was either a kind of diving cap or Phrygian cap, or else this cone of straw. The 2 of them were speaking sometimes, as the words came to them, between spells of listening to the evening. "Well," said Arthur, "I must say it is nice to be a king. It was a splendid battle." "Did you think so?" "Of course it was splendid. Lot of Orkney ran. Look at the way Lot of Orkney ran after I began to use Excalibur. He got you down first. That was nothing. It was because I was not using Excalibur. As soon as I drew my trusty sword, they ran like rabbits. They will come again, said the magician. All six. The kings of Orkney, Garleth, Gore, Scotland, the Tower, and the 100 Knights have started already. In fact, the Gaelic Confederation. You must remember that your claim to the throne is hardly a conventional one. Let them come, replied the king. I don't mind. I will beat them properly this time, and then we will see who is master. The old man crammed his beard in his mouth and began to chew it as he generally did when it was put about. He bit through one of the hairs, which stuck between two teeth. He tried to lick it off, then took it out with his fingers. Finally, he began curling it into 2 points. I suppose you will learn some day, he said, but God knows it is hard breaking uphill work. Oh? Yes, cried Merlin passionately. Oh, oh, oh? That is all you can say? Oh, 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 like a schoolboy. I shall cut off your head if you are not careful. Cut it off. It would be a good thing if you did. You shouldn't have to keep on tutoring at any rate. Arthur shifted his elbow and the battleman and looked at his ancient friend. What is the matter, Merlin? He asked. Have I been doing something wrong? Am I sorry if I have? I am sorry if I have. The magician uncurled his beard and blew his nose. It is not so much what you're doing, he said. It is how you're thinking. If there is one thing I can stand, it is stupidity. I always say that stupidity is a sin against the Holy Ghost. I know you do. Now you're being sarcastic. The king took him by the shoulder and turned him round. Look, he said, what is wrong? Are you in a bad temper? If I've done something stupid, tell me. Don't be in a bad temper. It had the effect of making the aged negroid angrier than before. Tell you, he explained. And what is going to happen when there is nobody to tell you? Are you never going to think for yourself? What is going to happen when I am locked up in this wretched tumulus of mine? I should like to know. I did know there was a tumulus in it. Oh, hang the tumulus. What tumulus? What am I supposed to be talking about? Stupidity, said Arthur. It was stupidity when we started. Exactly. Well, it's no good saying exactly. You were going to say something about it. I don't know what I was going to say about it. You put one in such a passion with all your this and that I'm sure nobody would know what they were talking about for 2 minutes together. How did it begin? It began about the battle. Now remember, said Merlin, that's exactly where it did begin. I said it was a good battle. So I recollect. Well, it was a good battle, he repeated defensively. It was a jolly battle, and I won it myself, and it was fun. The magician's eyes veiled themselves like vultures as he vanished inside his mind. There was silence on the battlements for several minutes while a pair of peregrines that were being hacked in a nearby field flew over their heads in a playful chase, crying out, "Kick, kick, kick!" their bells ringing. Merlin looked out from his eyes once more. It was clever of you, he said, slowly, to win the battle. Arthur had been taught that he ought to be modest, and he was too simple to notice that the vulture was going to pounce. Oh, well, it was luck. Very clever, repeated Merlin. How many of your parents were killed? I don't remember. No. Kai said. The king stopped in the middle of the sentence and looked at him. Well, he said, it was not fun then. I had not thought. The, the tally was more than 700. They were all Cairns, of course. None of the knights were injured except for the one who broke his leg falling off the horse. When he saw that Arthur was not going to answer, the old fellow went on in a bitter voice. I was forgetting, he added, that he had some really nasty bruises. Arthur glared at his fingernails. I hate you when you are a prig. Merlin was charmed. That's the spirit, he said, putting his arm through the king's and smiling cheerfully. That's more like it. Stand up for yourself, that's the ticket. Asking advice is the fatal thing. Besides, I won't be here to advise you fairly soon. What is this you keep talking about? About not being here and the tumulus and so on. It is nothing. I'm due to fall in love with a girl called Nimue in a short time, and then she learns my spells and locks me up in a cave for several centuries. It's one of those things which are going to happen. But Marilyn, how horrible to be stuck in a cave for centuries like a toad in a hole. You must do something about it. Nonsense, said the magician. What I was talking about this maiden. I was talking about advice. You must never take it. Well, I'm going to give you some now. I advise you to think about battles, and about your realm of grammage, and about the sort of things a king has to do. Will you do that? I will. Of course I will. But about this girl who learns your spells. You see, it is a question of the people as well as of the kings. When you said about the battle being a lovely one, you were thinking like your father. Aren't you think like yourself so that you will be a credit to all this education I have been giving you after so so that you will be a credit to all this education I've been giving you afterwards when I'm only an old man locked up in a hole. Merlin, there, I was playing for sympathy. Never mind, I said it for effect. As a matter of fact, I will be charming to have a rest for a few hundred years. It will be charming to have a rest for a few hundred years, and as for Nimue, I'm looking backwards to her a good deal. No, it is an important thing, is thinking for yourself business in the matter of battles. Have you ever thought seriously about the state of your country, for instance, or gone to go on all your life being like Uther Pendragon? After all, you're the king of the place. I've I have not thought very much. No. Then let me do some thinking with you. Suppose we think about your Gaelic friend, Sir Bruce St. Pity. That fellow. Exactly. And why do you say it like that? He's a swine, he goes murdering maidens, and as soon as a real knight turns up to rescue them, he gallops off for all he is worth. He breeds special fast horses so that nobody can catch him, and he stabs people in the back. He's a marauder. I would kill him at once if I could catch him. Well, said Merlin, I don't think he's very different from the others. What is about all this chivalry anyhow? It simply means being rich enough to have a castle and a suit of armor, and then when you have them, you make the Saxon people do what you like. The only risk you run is of getting a few bruises if you happen to come across another knight. Look at the tilt between Pellinore and Gramor when you were small. It is this armor that does it. All the barons can slice the poor people about as much as they want, and as the days work to hurt each other, and the result is that the country is devastated. Might is right, that's the motto. Bruce Sans Pity is the only example of the general is only an Bruce Sans Pity is only an example of the general situation. Look at Lut and Nantros and Uriens and all that Gaelic crew fighting against you for the kingdom. Pulling swords out of stone is not a legal proof of paternity, I admit, but the kings of the old ones are not fighting you about that. They have rebelled, although you are their feudal sovereign, simply because their throne is insecure. England's difficulty, we used to say, is Ireland's opportunity. This is their chance to pay off racial scores and to have some bloodletting sport to make a bit of money in ransoms. Their turbulence does not cost them anything themselves because they are dressed in armor, and you seem to enjoy it. But look at the country. Look at the barns burned, the dead men's legs sticking out of ponds, and horses with swelled bellies in the roadside, and mills falling down, and money buried. Nobody daring to walk abroad with gold ornaments on their clothes. That is chivalry nowadays. That is Uther Pendragon touch. Then you talk about a battle being fun. I was thinking of myself. I know.